Alright everyone, we are back with the iPad for the second week in a row, and you know what that means? That means, once again, we're going into a Reddit thread. This one is talking about signs somebody should not be joining your D&D group. Red flags, particularly for LFGs. The big old nope signs that DMs see that make them not want to accept a player into their group. I think that this is very, very important. We've talked about LFG before, very recently in fact. Earlier this month, I went over a guide on how to join your perfect D&D group on LFG. But, yes, of course, there are going to be red flags and problem players on LFG. It is only natural. There's a lot of people that play this game, and some of them are bound to not be the greatest. So, let's see how we can identify those people today on Tabletop Tavern Tips. Without further ado, let's get started. Red flags will usually be in the response to what they are looking for in a DM and group. You can tell the bitter ones will usually respond with sarcasm and malice towards their previous groups. I also always check their Reddit post history. Nothing will tell you more about a person than what they post on the internet. Most people are not going to resort to talking maliciously about previous groups when it comes to joining a new group. If the first thing somebody does when you communicate with them, the first thing is talking smack about a previous group, that is probably not a good sign. Now, of course, people are going to be venting. That is natural. And if someone joins your D&D group, over time, I'm sure negative experiences in the hobby will come up eventually. But if it's the first thing that comes to mind, that's something that I would probably look out for. Is it an immediate, you're not joining the group? Probably not, but it is a warning sign, and if they continue cropping up, yeah, I'll probably move along to the next player. Now, as for the whole Reddit post history thing, I think that not only is that fair game, I think that that is a great move. If you are trying to determine who should join your group, and if they've already shown red flags, checking what they post on Reddit is probably a good idea. Reddit is a public forum after all. It's completely fair game for a DM who wants to make sure that their player is fit for a group. My short answer to your question is people that make light of safety tools, anyone with serial killer-esque character concepts, and people with difficult schedules on the days I listed we might play. Now, difficult schedules, I'm not going to say that's a red flag, because I usually think, when I think red flag, I think, a negative trait. Having a rough schedule, I don't think that's a negative trait. It's just an unfortunate circumstance that's inevitable when you're playing D&D. Now, as for the whole making life safety tools, absolutely. A lot of groups use safety tools, and if you bring up a safety tool and somebody's immediate response is to be angry or resentful, yeah, that's a pretty hard pass for me. Now, this is going to come up later, but it's really important to keep in mind that DMs get 30, perhaps, character concepts and applications from possible players. So if you piss them off in some way, they can easily just move on to somebody else. It's a cruel but incredibly true principle. And yeah, if somebody is immediately making fun of safety tools the second they're brought up, that's a pretty hard red flag that means I'm probably going to move on to one of the other players that applied. Now, character concepts being creepy or disturbing, I've seen creepy character concepts work. In fact, we interviewed Whistle While You Work, who featured prominently on Joe Cat's show Necro Hunt, which recently wrapped up. Congratulations to that group. But yeah, she plays villainous characters at times, and yeah, sometimes they can be rather creepy, but that doesn't mean she's like a bad person or a problem player. But while I say that, people who showcase extreme edginess in their character concepts and backstories, yeah, that might be a pass for me. Maybe not because I think that person is a bad person for liking edgy storytelling, but if anything, it's just because that sort of story usually doesn't fit into the campaigns that I run. We're a group of 8 looking for a DM. We love roleplay. Anything super vague or excessively detailed, big red flags. Now, I don't really know what this guy means by excessively detailed. Detailed LFG posts, I don't really see as red flags. If anything, I just see them more as annoyances because it's a lot to read through and I have other things to do in the day. But yeah, vague, definite agree on that one. Vague LFG posts usually turn me off. D&D games are a big investment for the players and especially for the DM. If I see a group of 8 players posting about wanting a DM with no details at all about their play style or what they're looking for in the game, then I have no incentive to join that game. I don't necessarily think it's suspicious, I just find it to be kind of lazy. And on top of that, as a dungeon master, I put in a lot in creating a campaign, and if there's no details given, then why would I waste my time applying? I know nothing about what they want. This also goes for DMs looking for players. DMs, when you are posting about your games, I said this in the LFG video, you need to have at least a bit of detail. Maybe not so much that the post becomes incredibly difficult to read, but enough that a player can understand what they're getting into. Especially if you have a homebrew world. If you just tell me we're playing in a homebrew world, that's it. I'm not going to know what I'm getting into. Is it post-apocalyptic? Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? What are we talking about here? What's the vibe? What are we even playing? So yeah, excessively detailed I don't think is as big of a problem, but vague, 100%. Just get on the mic and talk to them. LFG pro tip, if you are available from 6 to 9 p.m. Monday nights, post it at 6 p.m. on Monday night. People who aren't in a game are looking for one in their free time, and if they're on Reddit looking for a game, it is ostensibly their free time. This is not a red flag in any way, but it is such a great piece of advice that I never even thought of that I had to include. Yes, this is great. If you are looking for a game, try to post the Reddit post when you're looking for the game so that you can attract players who share that time frame. Scheduling is always going to be a problem in Dungeons & Dragons. It's just a natural part of getting a bunch of people together to play. However, if you do this, it can help to mitigate that issue at least a little bit, and I think anything that can help with scheduling is good in my book. So I have this character pre-made. She's a homebrew Kitsune race. I don't think any pre-made character or Kitsune race is going to be a red flag for me. However, if I go to that player and go, hey man, Kitsune is probably not going to fit into my homebrew world, can you change to something else? And they immediately get incredibly upset. If that's the case, then yeah, they're probably not going to be joining my game. D&D requires flexibility. I've said this many times, and if they're completely inflexible during character creation of all things, how are they going to be in the actual game? You don't want a railroading player playing in your campaign. That's just no fun at all. And also, homebrew races. You definitely want to look over the stats of that thing because, yeah, broken homebrews are not fun. And if you allow them, it's kind of hard to disallow them. I usually say something like, hey man, this homebrew race looks good on the surface, but let's see how it is in playtesting and we'll adjust from there. That is often what I say, because if a homebrew looks good on the surface, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good or balanced in gameplay. Maybe it'll need a buff. Who knows? So yeah, that's my process for homebrew pre-mades and all that nonsense. Also, I'll just the obvious here, Kitsune is a race that appears a lot in RPG horror stories, same thing with like tieflings and stuff, but I don't necessarily think it's a red flag to play a particular race. It's the method by which they play the race that's the problem, not the race itself. Like, tieflings aren't necessarily a problem player thing, right? But yeah, anyway, moving on. My most important question on applications is, we meet in the tavern, where are you sitting? A surprising number of people out themselves as the antisocial type on that question. I really like that. Not only is it a good way to out people who may not be great at your table, problem players so to speak, but it's also a really good character building question, like where is your character sitting in this tavern, what are they doing? That's a good way to build the initial character and to get a feel for somebody's roleplay. I really like that. Now, if somebody says, I'm sitting in the corner brooding, again, not necessarily red flag. I like edgy characters, but when they are played correctly. If somebody writes just, I'm sitting in the corner brooding with nothing else to it, that's boring. That's not very fun. I want more than that. Like, what is your character doing in the corner? Twiddling their thumb, staring up at the stars? What's going on there? This is somewhat of a character building question, which Ginny D talks about a lot on her channel. And yeah, character building questions are a good way to gauge someone's roleplay and to figure out the kind of player that they are when they're telling a story. Telling a story is a big part of a lot of D&D games. So yeah, including some character builder questions in your LFG, maybe not a bad idea for discerning the way somebody plays this game. Whatever I do, I ask them to PM me, and I include a keyword that must be written in their private message. It shows me that they took at least the time to read my whole post, and they're not just applying wholesale to every thread. That is really good. Having a little check you're not a bot thing is great because yeah, a lot of people just respond to every thread, and that is not good. I talked about this in the LFG video. You need to reply to threads that you actually are invested in. If you don't, you are wasting both your own time and the DM's time. Not every D&D game is made for everybody. Finding your perfect D&D game is a big deal. Looking for a game that actually fits you. And yeah, if a DM wants to include a little keyword to make sure that you're not just applying to every post, I think that's perfectly valid. And that is all that I have for you guys today. I do want to be a little bit honest here at the end. I know I've been doing a lot of these iPad Reddit reading videos, and I didn't want to. Sometimes I feel like they're not as good as the videos where I'm writing the tips out myself, but yeah, I want to do these more because if you're unaware, this entire show is improvised, and that means that being able to do it is entirely predicated on whether or not I feel like it that day, quite frankly. And recently, I've been pretty exhausted. We've got finals coming up at university, I'm handling a 3 upload per week schedule, and finally, I'm also moving to a new place. So we have a lot going on at Crispy's Tavern, and that means that doing Tabletop Tavern tips, this improv show, is going to be more and more difficult as I get more and more tired. So these Reddit reading videos are great for me. I get to have something to base my whole monologue off of, and it really, really, truly helps me out. And I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. I know this has nothing to do with the actual video, but I wanted to be a little bit honest here at the end if you stayed till now. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our RPG Horror Story series, where we talk about the best, the worst from Dungeons and Dragons. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave your LFG red flag or just D&D red flag in general down in the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.